Hello everyone and welcome back to the FPL Phillips YouTube channel and to what is going to be a template video, but not in the way you might have seen it on other creators on the platform. We're not only going to be running through the new template team now that Jesus and Nkunku have been ruled out through injury for game week 1, but also having a look at some of the price points where it might be the wisest choice to go away from the template, which kind of price brackets you can exploit, and the different options that are available there. And I found one which is a bit of a rumour at the moment, but could end up being an absolute gemstone when it comes to FPL, and is currently 0% owned when you round to the nearest percentage. So look, all that to look forward to. Make sure to hit the thumbs up button if you do enjoy the video, and also subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. But we'll kick things off with a rather boring one and skip over it relatively briefly with Onana in goal, who seems to be the most template keeper at the moment. Now, there are a few rumours with other 4.0 million keepers other than Areola, so Matt Turner could end up at Nottingham Forest, or another keeper may well make the move, but him at the moment seems to be the one who's sat on everyone's benches, and to be honest, could be a price drop waiting to happen, but he certainly is template. Onana is the one who'll be starting in the majority of teams come game week 1. Manchester United are about to kick off in a friendly as I record this, so we'll get to see how he fares in that one. Hopefully he doesn't get injured as well. But he's got some nice fixtures to start off the season, as do the rest of the Red Devils side. And Onana presents what Ten Hag has really been looking for in a goalkeeper. Great with his feet, can play long balls over the top as we've seen from other keepers in recent years and more modern football. And Onana does average enough in terms of pass completion per 90 so that he'll be able to kind of compete for bonus points when Manchester United do come away with a clean sheet, or maybe even if he just makes a lot of saves depending on how the United defence is doing early on. I really like Emi Martinez of Villa as well. Another 4.5 million options do look good, but you're kind of just guessing as to which one will come and present a good option in a few game weeks' time. And really, so with Onana from the start, seems a safe pick. We can use the wild card on average being used around the game week 8 mark or whatever. Then's the time to move. Don't use a free transfer on your keeper. Just wait for it. Onana's got some great fixtures over those first couple of games, and then you can move on a wild card to whoever ends up being what is probably going to be another standout 4.5 million keeper option for the season. But we'll move into the defence then, and we've got a kind of back three that seems to be in a lot of teams at the moment. Whether or not Chilwell is starting for those teams remains to be seen. So Chilwell's on a bench for half, and probably starting for the other half of teams at the moment. But Gabriel and Estupiñán are definitely ones who are nailed in the majority of drafts. Gabriel, the standout Arsenal defender, doesn't have much in terms of attacking expected assists, but also he does present some good expected goals data from last year. Estupiñán at 5.0 million, again, some really nice fixtures to kick off the season for Brighton. The fixtures do turn a little bit, but if Brighton can continue their form from last year, I don't think it will be as much of a big deal if people are making out. We're also going to have that kind of defender 4 options, or the 4.5 million defender, who could come in when Estupiñán's fixtures turn a little bit for the worse. So that could be something to consider when looking for your other defender in this slot, is who has good fixtures when the Brighton fixtures are looking a little bit worse for wear. Ben Chilwell is in a lot of drafts at the moment, and as mentioned, he's on a lot of benches for game week 1 as well. Personally, I think I would be starting him for certain. He'll be in my team as well. I think either way, if the Liverpool-Chelsea game finishes 0-0 as it has done in a lot of times in the past, then you win. Or if there's goals in that game, then Chilwell going down the left-hand side, attacking the weakest area of the Liverpool backline in Trent's side, definitely could be a recipe for some attacking returns for him as well. I think the only way you don't come away with something really from this game is if there's only a few goals in it and most of them go to Liverpool basically. So yeah, Chilwell I think is a great option, and yeah, you probably should start him is my assessment of it if you've got him in your team for game week 1. And then we've got that defender 4 slot, which we'll touch on in just a second, alongside Kabore at 4.0 million, who seems to be the standout 4.0 million defender option. Bell at the same side is a centre-back, so doesn't have as much attacking threat and probably isn't a minute's risk, but someone who could be is Baldock at Sheffield United. He's also a wing-back, so he presents that attacking threat like Kabore could do as well. However, he might face some rotation risk later on in the season. And then you finally got Bayer at Burnley, but at the moment, he's just a centre-back as well. Doesn't present quite as much attacking threat as you could get from a wing-back. So that's why I think the majority of people are choosing to go with the Luton wing-back. So we need to touch on that 4.5 million defender option then, and I might just go through all of Rico Henry and all the ones that you've seen talked about already, but to be honest, I think there's a little bit more of an exciting discussion to be had. And that is around a player who might well move from Chelsea to Crystal Palace on loan this season. You probably know him from last season and his breakout, or if you're a Chelsea fan, Lewis Hall, who played left back, as you can see from his heat map, for Chelsea at quite a lot of points during last season's campaign. He is, however, naturally a midfielder, and one's assuming that when he goes to Crystal Palace, if he does go to Crystal Palace, that he'll be deployed in a midfield role, which makes him out of position in FPL as he is listed as that 4.5 million defender bracket. The Palace fixtures are pretty nice. Over the first 6, they are inside the top half for the fixture difficulty level. People saying the Palace fixtures aren't good enough to go with Eze. I don't think that's the case at all. And Lewis Hall does kind of present another option in that Crystal Palace side who we could go for. Maybe if you're looking for some cover and can't quite get Eze into your team, but we'll cover the 6.5 million mids in just a minute. As you can see from his stats last season, he had a pretty poor points per 90 total due to Chelsea's really rubbishness, you'd have to say. But his expected FPL points per 90, 4.3. I do seem to remember him creating a lot of chances that were squandered by the rather poor Chelsea attackers last year. And his expected goal involvements per 90, 0.39. Really, really good for a left back. And big chance involvements per 90, even better, 0.95 is a ridiculous stat. A lot of that coming from creating big chances, which is represented in the expected assists as well as part of the expected goal involvement. So creating a lot of big chances, getting a few big chances even himself. As you can see on the heat map, in fact, he was taking set pieces and corners from the right-hand side with that in-swinging left foot. So could well end up being on those for Palace as well if he does make the move. This is very much an if at the moment. Rico Henry is probably the one I'd go for if this move doesn't end up occurring, but if it does, then there's definitely a huge argument for going with Lewis Hall, who's currently at 0.2% ownership. Into midfield then, and we'll touch on next in the midfield. We've got the 4 that are kind of in the lot of teams at the moment, or at least 3 of them are pretty much in every single draft. There's the 2 Arsenal midfielders in Saka and Martinelli, or some teams might have Odegaard, and then we've got Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes as well. So a lot of the budget is going into these 4 players because you're not having Trent or Salah in this draft, then you're having that budget kind of all splurged on the midfield and Haaland. So Saka and Martinelli are basically the standout options now because Jesus is out and injured. A lot of players are now going to have 2 Arsenal midfielders to try and capitalise on those early fixtures that they have that look very nice indeed. We've then got Marcus Rashford and Bruno Fernandes of United completing a triple up with Onana, who again have really nice fixtures over the first couple and are 2 sides who look pretty attacking and look pretty good and have kind of proven themselves as Premier League assets, all 4 of these guys in FPL last season. So there's a good and strong argument for having them in your midfield. It's just whether you can afford to spend all that funds kind of having all these mid-price midfielders in your side. And then we've got that kind of midfielder 5 slot. So at the moment, this draft is in 3-5-2 formation. Some people might have different formations, of course, but at the moment, the template seems to be the 3-5-2. The 6.5 midfielder bracket seems to be the one that has the most debacle around it and has, to be honest, a lot of options that you could go for at that price. And what I thought I'd do is compare, to be honest, my favourite 4 at the moment. There are others, like maybe even Mudryk, who could present an option as a Chelsea player a few game weeks into the season after we've seen how he's performed. But for the ones you could start the season with, I think these are the ones you're going to end up picking between. Mbeumo, who seems really popular, Matoma, who's been really popular since kind of the game launched, but is now maybe becoming a little bit less popular. We've got Eze, who's maybe being talked about a little bit more, and then new signing Diaby at Aston Villa, who could present a really, really nice option. So Mbeumo's got the highest expected points of the bunch. This is taken from FPL Team and their kind of predicted points totals over the first 6 game weeks. I've added them all up, and Mbeumo comes away the highest with a really, really nice total, and he probably has been my favourite throughout most of pre-season to go for on penalties as that Brentford talisman. With Tony out, he's going to be relied upon for a lot of the goals, and there's good justification for having him as your 6.5 million midfielder. Matoma is not got as much upside to him. He's not on penalties, of course, and he's got quite a lot of players in that Brighton attack to compete with for position. You would imagine he's going to be starting the majority of games, of course, but there could be a slight minutes risk there. We're going to have more minutes in a lot of games this season due to the new kind of added time rules that we're getting. Maybe we'll see some subs from Matoma, meaning that he won't get as many minutes as the likes of Mbeumo or especially Eze, who didn't actually get substituted once during his time under Roy Hodgson at the end of last season. So for the 8 game weeks that Hodgson was in charge, Eze played 90 minutes for every single game, and I can't see anything but that continuing into the new season. Palace might have lost a bit of their strike force with Zaha moving and now Elise looking like his release clause might end up being activated and he might leave as well. Even if he's not injured, he probably won't be playing either way. Eze is definitely going to be relied upon for the Crystal Palace attack, and I have no doubt that if Palace do rather well this season and at the start of the campaign, then Eze will be an absolute goldmine when it comes to FPL. It's just unfortunate that they don't have as strong as an attack as some of the other sides on paper, and that means that you're kind of relying upon Palace to do well. If they do well, then Eze is going to be great. If they don't do well, then Eze just can't do great because Palace aren't putting any goals in the net. So a nice expected points total of over 23 for the first 6 game weeks. Definitely better than Matoma is what FPL Team is suggesting. So Eze over Matoma would definitely be my call. I just would be stuck between Eze and Mbomo at this point. And then finally, we've got Diaby, who could be a nice option, especially for those who aren't too keen on Ollie Watkins as their second striker. Again, we'll touch on that in a moment. 25.5 expected points for him over the first 6 game weeks. The fixtures aren't too bad for Aston Villa as well. He looks really good. Admittedly, I've not seen too much of him. We've not had many opportunities to see much of him because he's only joined rather late in pre-season, but it's encouraging to see how quickly he's kind of been integrated into the Villa system. He's going to be starting. He's kind of started and kind of played even alongside Ollie Watkins as more of a second striker role. So personally, really like the look of this one. Maybe he's a wait and see because he is one of those players who's a new transfer and isn't as Premier League proven. But personally, Diaby's maybe the watch and wait for me. Eze and Mbumo are the ones I'm kind of weighing up against each other for that 6.5 million slot in my side. At the moment, still probably on Mbumo, and maybe even with that combination of one of the strikers we'll see in a second, they could present a maybe kind of nice rotation option. But at the moment, those are the two that I'm picking between. And perhaps the biggest debacle and where there's the most debate amongst FPL managers at the moment are who are you going to go for now Jesus and Nkunku are out injured. We of course have Erling Haaland in our front line and we have that Mubama at West Ham who seems like he might be starting and getting minutes now. As I record this, he's starting a friendly and West Ham don't have many striker options. So I definitely have him as your bench striker at the very least. But the second forward pick in the middle where there's kind of that wide range of prices from 5.5 million up to 8 million is where there's going to be the most debate. And here are 4 of my favourite options. And these are the 4 options you can see on screen right now that present different picks at striker. Ollie Watkins at 8 million, Darwin Núñez at 7.5. We've then got Jackson at 7 million and João Pedro at 5.5. And out of the 4, I think the most popular that people are switching to at the moment does seem to be Ollie Watkins. He's at the same price as Jesus, so it makes an easy switch over without changing any of the rest of your draft if you don't want to. And he also has that kind of flexible price point where you're able to downgrade to any of the cheaper forwards who may well start off the season in a fashion that was not anticipated. Such as Darwin Núñez at 7.5 million, who does look like if he starts will be a really, really good pick this year. 7.5 million could easily get a few price rises if he hits the ground running, and that's the kind of positive to having someone like Watkins at 8 million is you can downgrade and don't have to have the worry of having any money in the bank that you need to upgrade. Say if you had Jackson at 7 million and you saved 0.5, or if you wanted to upgrade to Darwin Núñez, then you might end up being priced out of that. If Darwin starts the season really well, he goes up to 7.6 and you can no longer afford him, or you're forced to make an early transfer in the week, which is never the ideal thing to do. But Darwin Núñez is competing with, Cody Gakpo and the rest of the Liverpool attackers for those 2 slots alongside Mohamed Salah in the front 3. Personally, if you had to ask me, I think he'll start. He's got the number 9 shirt now. I think he'll play in that number 9 role, as he's kind of done with pre-season and scored a lot of goals. We don't always put all our faith in pre-season. We've seen evidence of that with someone like Leon Bailey last year. But personally, I think this could be a gold mine, and Darwin Núñez, a lot of people going without him. Although Watkins could be a really nice option, I think Darwin Núñez is probably one I would prefer to go with from the get-go. If the rest of your team is okay and the core is solid, I think you're definitely within your rights to take a risk and go with someone more differential, have a bit more fun, and hope that pays off early on. But it's not the end of the world, and don't get overreactive if it doesn't work out and your rank ends up looking really poor from the get-go. There's plenty of time to recover it throughout the season, because a small amount of points make, as we know, a huge amount of difference to your rank early on. We've then got Jackson, who we kind of mentioned at 7.0 million. Should be kind of assured for minutes now that Nkunku's out injured, but my worry is really that Chelsea are just not going to be the attack they could be if they had Nkunku in the side, especially for that first fixture against Liverpool. I really like the look of him, though. I don't think he's going to be on penalties in that Chelsea team, even if Nkunku is out. But 7 million for a starting forward in a team who could see a lot of improvement this season could present an option at some point, or even just a few game weeks into the season, where the Chelsea and fixtures improve around game week 3. And then finally, João Pedro, who's probably the second most popular pick after Watkins, I'd maybe say. I'm seeing him in a lot of teams at the moment, and a few even with Nketiah, who's also at 5.5 million. Pedro's been brought in from Watford to kind of play in that role behind the striker, whether that ends up being Ferguson or Danny Welbeck, who starts the campaign. It seems that Enciso, who's the main minutes threat to Pedro, is out with an injury as well, so he should be relatively assured for that game time to try and start the season. He's looked really good as well. I really like the look of Pedro as an option, and the main positive with him too is that he's so cheap that after game week 1, you could potentially have him just sat on the bench, or after a few game weeks maybe, however many you want to play, you could then just bench Pedro and have him as that first choice option ready to come in if maybe Haaland gets injured or whatever. You still have at least one forward who will play, but you could have him as first sub. You're only spending $1 million more than a 4.5 million striker, which is the cheapest available, and you have him as a first sub with whoever it is, probably your 5th midfielder, coming in and starting from a couple of game weeks in onwards, basically. So you could even do that with Mbeumo, for example. João Pedro has a really nice fixture against Luton in game week 1. You could have Mbeumo on your bench for the game against Spurs. You could then, after that, start Mbeumo from then onwards, but still have the assurance of Pedro on your bench, whilst mainly starting with a 4-5-1 formation, which normally presents the risk that, like I said, with Haaland getting injured or something, you then don't have a forward and you're down to 10 men. But if you have Pedro on your bench at first sub, that should hopefully prevent that issue, as long as Pedro does get some minutes himself, that's saying. So yeah, let me know which one of these forwards you're going for. That's going to be question of the day down below in the comments. Who is your second striker alongside Erling Haaland? I hope you have enjoyed the video, and if you have, make sure to leave a thumbs up on the thumbs up button, and then comment down below, as I said, who is the second forward. Make sure to subscribe if you're new around here as well, and I hope to catch you all in the next one, in which I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.